And we will go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining us for day 2 of this week's RadResponder nationwide drill. Today we are focusing on building maps and refining our partnerships. Today we'll just give a brief overview of the day 1. We'll talk about day 2 logistics. We'll give you all an introduction to the scenario, how to access your regional events, taking a look at the event map and what you should be doing within the event map, and your action items for the day. Like I mentioned earlier, all the sessions are recorded and they will be posted to YouTube, and you will all be given that link. Today, we are focusing on building maps and refining partnerships. As a reminder, you all are assigned various ROS task force leaders depending on your region. You all should have been put in contact together yesterday. If not, that means that you were not registered through that GoToWebinar link, and therefore I did not have your contact information to add you. So if you did not receive any correspondence from your ROS team leads yesterday, please email us at support@cburnresponder.net, and I will make sure that you're on my registration list and we'll get you set up. Yesterday, there were some questions about the chat. So again, if you were not registered through that GoToWebinar link, I did not add you to your event and the corresponding field team because, again, I did not have that information. If you were added to the event and field team, but you did not see a chat, that means that your organization did not have chat enabled. So we enabled a lot of organizations' chats yesterday. I expect we'll probably enable some more today. If you are an organization that does not currently have chat and would like to leverage that, please email us again at support@cburnresponder.net, and we will be happy to add that for your organization. So yesterday, we kicked things off and you were to accomplish a few tasks. You were 1, to establish contact with your ROS task force leaders. You went through your organization's partnerships and answered the various questions from that day 1 participant guide. If you wanted, we enabled chat and you were able to access the team messages. And the ROS task force leaders began to grow into their roles. More about that, so I will pass this off to Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I was sort of a national ROS task force leader yesterday, trying to help all of the regional ROS task force leaders. And I guess in incident command structure, I'd probably be the ROS branch director in the operations section and have these ROS task force under me. But the key thing was trying to get you folks connected to the ROS task force leaders, we'll call them TFLs, and introduce themselves. It was great to see that some of them created a ROS organizational structure. For example, introducing themselves as who each of them were, what they did in their real jobs, to kind of give you a sense of what their skill set was, their authorities are, and delegating some tasks. For example, one ROS task force leader had some that really wanted to do data verification and validation, and some wanted to help with mapping and GIS, etc. There was another ROS task force leader that shared a link to the Department of Homeland Security guidance for response to an RDD. We knew that the scenario, as you'll all learn here today, is an RDD, and so that was actually useful. So players could read it, and then everyone in the partnership is playing from the same script. Really important. Again, we want to have one incident, one response, not lots of different uncoordinated responses. One of the more interesting things from my perspective as the national leader of the ROS program for the states is that there's some ROS, including at least one ROS task force leader, who are not a part of a RadResponder organization. And we hope that that can be remedied in this drill. The reason is that ROS aren't designed to just sit on the sidelines and then be brought in when there's some sort of incident. We want ROS to be able to help, as they are volunteers, to do some things that you may not have staff to do. Maybe it's training first responders, writing an emergency plan for an RDD or a nuclear detonation using the great federal guidance that's been put out there, helping with exercises, maybe having an exercise like this one in your own municipality, your own organization. You can always take these national exercises and duplicate it in your locality to make it work as a training session. And of course, the ROS are ready for a real event. As they say, you don't want to be exchanging business cards at the incident. You really want to be able to do that before you get to the incident scene. Next slide, please. All right, so go ahead, Christine.
Did you want me to talk a little bit about this, or would you?
Actually, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so yesterday I'm obviously trying to keep aware of what every region is doing to make sure I can help. So there are some things that I did notice. So if you requested a partnership with an organization that does not have an admin, there's no one in that organization that can approve that request. So there are a few things that happen. One, I or the CBRN responder team, that request goes to the support email to let us know that there's no one there to approve it. For you as an organization that's looking to request partnerships, I always recommend looking at that organization's details page and seeing if you recognize anyone that should be made the admin. So if you don't see a current admin, maybe you know someone has left, but someone has filled that role. It's a good idea to reach out, especially if you have your own relationships with your various agencies in your region, perhaps reaching out to them and seeing who should take over that role. So sometimes that turnover means the RadResponder lead that was there a few years ago has left the agency. So these are things that are outside of RadResponder, but things that will affect your RadResponder use. If you were not here for day one or you missed day one, don't worry about it. You can jump in and jump out of the drill whenever you would like and whatever your schedule allows. But if you did wish to look at the day one materials, you could do so from the RadResponder resource library. We have a folder for daily kickoff meetings, which will have the slides we used yesterday. And then I highlighted here a link to the recording that you can just copy and paste in your browser. And then the participant guides are also available. So now we'll go on to day two. So today is going to focus on building situational awareness through the event map and refining your partnerships. We're going to focus on coordinating with the various organizations that are participating in this drill in the case of a real world incident that happens in your region. You're then going to determine what your organization's role could be in a response. There's going to be one radiological incident per region to facilitate that drill discussion. Based on your feedback, we now have a PDF and Word document version of each of the day's participant guide in the folder. So if you do navigate back to the participant guide section, you will see that there are the day two guides available to download, one being that PDF and one being a Word document. So whichever one you prefer. When you do download the day two participant guide, page one is going to have that informational section on the region that you're in and the links to view the team meetings, etc. But once you get to page two, we'll have an introduction to what you're going to be accomplishing today. Day two of the drill is again focusing on coordinating with your various organizations and what your organization's role would be in the response. There is one radiological dispersal device incident per region to facilitate drill discussion. Please assume that there are not 7 simultaneous RDD incidents, but rather only the one in your region. So you can ignore every other region for the sake of this scenario. The goal for today is to familiarize yourself with the event space. Ground truth data and NARAC products will become available on day 3. So there's going to be no data in the event today. In the meantime, you're going to have conversations with your group about how your procedures do or do not facilitate effective event creation and data sharing before data becomes available. After you read through the instructions, you'll have a variety of different questions and tasks. So the first 3 questions can be done individually. This is just identifying and ensuring you can access your event, you know where the release is, and how your state or what your state's relation is to the incident. Number 4 is what you're going to be corresponding with your regional partners and your ROS task force leaders. Numbers 5 and 6, you can conduct with people inside your organization, or if you want to continue these discussions with your regional group, you can. And then at the bottom, we have resources to day 2 specific capabilities. So if you wanted more information on creating and managing events, and you can also watch a video on the user drawing tool functionality. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Bill to talk about the scenario.
Great. Thanks, Christine. And just a note here, this is a lot different, a nationwide drill than many of the others. I know yesterday a lot of people were looking to start entering data. We have realized that we're really good across the nation at entering data. We need to understand all the different processes that are involved after data is entered, and with that data, using it for decision making. That's why we've incorporated the ROS in this, and we appreciate your patience working through this first of its kind. And now we're going to ask you to look at this scenario that's coming through and try not to fight through some of the artificialities. That's the way exercises are in a lot of cases. In fact, it's a lot easier to respond to a real incident than to design an exercise. Next slide, please. So there's been a radiological dispersal device incident in each of your regions. Just your region, though, is the incident that you're going to look at. They're all the same data products. They're just centered on a different location. Stay with the incident that's occurred in your region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's not 7 different RDDs going off at once. And if you feel the urge to go play in another region, that's only going to create problems. So please do ignore the other regions. Next slide. We know that the jurisdictions are not all going to be impacted. In fact, a lot of the guidance that has been published over the years by the federal interagency recognizes impacted jurisdictions and neighboring support jurisdictions. Even with the worst incident like a nuclear detonation, when you zoom out, it actually, for most yields of a weapon, is going to have a relatively confined area of very adverse impacts, and particularly with an RDD, even more so. So you might think, well, there's nothing for our jurisdiction to do. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, as you zoom out, you see so much of the rest of the nation, all the neighboring states that were unimpacted. They're going to be crucial to supporting that impacted jurisdiction or those impacted jurisdictions in a lot of different things. And people don't stay where they were when it occurred. If you look at what happened after Katrina, people self-evacuated all across the nation from every corner away from New Orleans as they could get. That same sort of mentality is likely to exist. So just think about that as you're playing out today, that even though you may not have contamination measurable above background or radiation above background, and you'll only see that tomorrow, you're going to work with just this theoretical model of an RDD, because in the very first minutes or even first few hours, you don't have a lot of good data. And I say good because good data has been validated by somebody who looks at it before it's used for decision making. And that always takes a little bit extra time beyond the data entry. And so with that, we need to be prepared at this stage with just generic kinds of awareness of what the RDD did or might have done to help with a lot of people who are questioning what's going on, and they're expecting proof, not promises. And that's where we hope the ROS can help out. And we also hope that everyone in the RadResponder organizations participating in this drill will be able to find comfort in the fact that we know the general characteristics, we know what we can say even before we have data that can protect people and critical infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the general characteristics, you can imagine as you see this horrible image from the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, where bombers exploded their bomb outside of it, that kind of destruction. And it all depends, of course, on the location, what's around it, and the size, etc. But in this particular case, we have heard from law enforcement and fire who responded first on scene that not only is it radioactive material that was dispersed, but they have verified that it emits alpha, it emits beta, and it emits gamma radiation. Obviously, that's a pretty complicated bomb to have multiple isotopes like that. And in fact, based on reports from law enforcement and fire, we're estimating that hundreds to potentially thousands of curies were released in this explosion. There were a small number of blast fatalities. There are a much larger number of blast and burn casualties nearby.
Because I'm going to make an order. Oh, cool. Nice. So
if you're not,
I don't know.
Somebody's got a hot mic, you might want to, thank you. And as you would expect with a explosion of this magnitude, nearby communications and transportation infrastructure in the local area are compromised. And this can be not just from the blast effects, but from the response. You can see in the image here, hundreds of responders. Think of all of them with dozens, if not hundreds of vehicles, and roads that are secured by law enforcement to prevent the loss of evidence and to maybe even control evacuation and help for those who are self-evacuating, etc. All of the public is worried, and maybe we have some ROS who are not so worried and panicking, but many are panicking, and everybody is demanding information and everybody's demanding care. Next slide, please. So again, we're not going to share data today. This is, again, based on trying to learn processes that are a part of RadResponder that maybe we're just not practicing enough, and we really need to practice them to be able to use RadResponder in a real incident. So that's why we're taking baby steps to get to that data, and that'll again be tomorrow. There you'll start to talk about specific actions relative to specific amounts of radiation. You will not, still on day 3 or any rest of the day of exercise this week, be entering data. This is a unique characteristic. We're doing that from simulated files. The drill will have a lot of information available in RadResponder. For example, you'll see where it is. I'll show you in a moment. You'll also be able to use the RDD overlays, you know, the 250 meter hot zone, 500 meter shelter-in-place radius, and then 2,000-meter downrange, downwind shelter-in-place area, and 10-point monitoring, which shows you not only the 10 points, but the near field, the far field, and the outlying areas that help you with thoughts about what kind of work you're going to need to plan together as partners, both as impacted jurisdictions and support jurisdictions in the neighboring areas. And that we're really hoping that today you understand how difficult it is to coordinate these efforts, but practice like this in drills helps us before we get out into a real incident. Next slide, please. Sounds like we have another hot mic there. You want to check your mics. So here are where we are setting our detonation points in each of the regions. We chose them to try to get some impact in as many jurisdictions as possible. Region 1 is White Plains, New York. Region 2, Fraser, Tennessee. Region 3, Tallahassee, Florida. Region 4, Devil's Tower, Texas. Region 5, Duluth, Minnesota. Region 6, Ingham, Idaho. And Region 7, Fresno, California. We've chosen wind directions and wind speeds to, again, try to have more impacted area than is typical for, say, a nuclear power plant release, or much less than what we would expect from a nuclear detonation. So again, don't look at these locations like, why there? We chose these locations so that we were able to get more impact on more partners. And again, don't just fight the scenario. Think about it as if you were not in White Plains, but it occurred in, for example, Connecticut, you would be doing the same things. So as the play occurs in these locations, don't just think about what you would be doing for that specific scenario, but what do you need to do when you go back to your organization after this drill, or even during this drill, to improve the way your organization's set up and using RadResponder to be better prepared if the scenario were actually centered in one of your municipalities. And next slide. This is for you, Christine. Thanks.
It is. I'm back. Okay, so like Bill mentioned, we have those 7 locations, and even if you are not in that state or area, you are still going to be heavily involved in this drill. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and don't be discouraged. If you registered for the drill via that GoToWebinar link, and I have registrants up through yesterday at around 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you registered after that, I will be sure to add you after this call and get you added to your region's event and the field team, and make sure you're on all the invites. But if you've already done that, you have been added to your field team, to your individual event and the field team. The name of the events are as follows. So it's going to be Nationwide Drill 2024, region, and then whatever region number you are. So for example, if you're in Region 3, your event name is Nationwide Drill 2024, Region 3. And if you do not have access to that event, that means you're not registered through that GoToWebinar link. So go ahead and do so. And I put the link to the registration form in the chat. You will only have access to and need access to one event. ROS is the only organization that is partnered on all of the events. So if you are a ROS, just make sure that you're working within your region that you're supposed to be in. But for all other participants, again, you will only have access to your region's event. And currently the ROS task force leaders are the only ones with the event manager roles. However, they can grant that role out to others if needed or if requested. And for my ROS task force leaders, if you have questions about that event manager role, please reach out to us and we'll help you. Just as a reminder, so this is how the regions are broken out. We are looking at the DOE RAP regions. So if you are in Region 1, the Northeast, you're going to be in the Region 1 event. 2, I won't go through all of this, but you can just see which region you are, and the corresponding event that you will be in. To access your event, you'll go to the RadResponder homepage, select that green events tile for search, and then just type in Nationwide Drill 2024 region, and you'll see 7 events, but you will only have access to 1. And again, we will be on the website, not the mobile application. If you wanted to use the mobile app for chat, you can, but this is all going to be done from the web version. So what do you need to accomplish before we meet again tomorrow? You're going to need to access your region's Nationwide Drill event. You're going to review the partners on the event to know which organizations in your region are participating in this nationwide drill. You're also going to look at the event map to see where the incident has occurred. And you're going to look at the event map to create user drawings, leverage the 10-point monitoring plan, and get familiar with the event space. As a reminder, there is no data. Data will be entered by the time you log in for tomorrow. And you're going to meet with your region to discuss question number 4 on that participant guide for day 2. And as a reminder, once you are logged into RadResponder, in the top ribbon, there is a resource option. You're going to click that and select Resource Library. You'll then scroll down to the document section and then locate the 2024 RadResponder Nationwide Drill folder. You can favorite it by clicking that star, and then it will show up on your favorites list on the left-hand side of your resource library page for a quick access. But once you're in that folder, you'll then have the subfolders of the daily kickoff meetings and participant guides. I think some ROS task force leaders also uploaded those guides to the event document library, which is a great use case there. But when in doubt, you can always navigate to the library folder and access it there. Okay, so we are at 11:30. I do want to have you all use this remaining time from the session to coordinate with your region and complete your day 2 tasks. I do ask, though, that if you do choose to meet with your region, to do so outside of this Teams meeting and perhaps set up a different or separate Teams meeting, just so this one is only applicable to the daily group meetings and kickoffs. As always, if you have any questions, you can email us at support@cburnresponder.net, and we'll help you out with any CBurn Responder, RadResponder related questions or issues. And again, just go ahead and make sure you're registered for the drill. If you search for your region's event and you are not added to it, email me and make sure you're registered, and I will sort that out and get you access as soon as possible. So I'm now going to stop the recording.